Marilynn Hughes is with us. She is the founder of the Out of Body Travel Foundation, which began in 2003, the mission of which is to reduce spiritual and physical hunger worldwide. Marilynn has written 102 books, including the first and only English language encyclopedia of ancient sacred texts, 40 magazines, and 18 CDs on out-of-body travel and comparative religious mysticism. Marilynn has experienced, researched, written, and taught about out-of-body travel and mysticism since 1987 and has appeared on innumerable radio and television programs to discuss her thousands of out-of-body experiences. I'm jealous because I have to tell you, Marilynn, welcome to the program. I've never experienced an out-of-body experience, so I don't know what one is. Why don't you tell us what an out-of-body experience constitutes?
Well, it's when your spiritual body separates from the physical body and then either subsequently travels in the physical sphere overlapping the earth or moves into the multidimensional worlds beyond it. And so, yeah, it is a pretty neat experience and can be extremely enlightening, frankly. As you know, my books definitely point out to people as they move through them, because it's ever expanding, continually opening up to more and more as the person moves through these trainings that we go through in these states, so they're very, very wonderful, beautiful experiences. So I can understand why you'd want to have that if you hadn't experienced it. Most people who've experienced it find it to be a very, very special moment in their lives, something they always remember, kind of like near-death experiences. It's usually something that's, transformational for people,
Absolutely. Well, and that is when I was doing a little research on this, the first thing that came to mind that popped into my head as an out-of-body experience is what people allegedly experience when they have a near-death experience. In other words, where they're maybe in a hospital operating room or something happens and their spirit or their soul, some people refer to it as, appears to leave their body. They can see themselves hovering over their own body, maybe other people in the room. In some cases, they claim to have experienced meeting the Lord or heaven or relatives, and then they kind of return to that. What you're talking about is a combination of that, but also, if I'm reading correctly, the ability to do this on your own without having to have a near-death experience, that you could actually learn how to do have an out-of-body experience.
Yeah, you learn to do it, and it's outside of having a physical death moment. You don't have to be near death to have the experience. A lot of the mystics from throughout history, and also just prophets, saints, and ascetics, sages throughout time, this is kind of the hallmark experience. It's also the hallmark experience of the moments of revelation that have occurred, which founded religions and shamanistic practices. We don't realize they're really these are, out-of-body experiences that are, these great experiences and moments in religious history or spiritual history that formed societies, religions, and cultures. You know what I mean? So
No, I do.
yeah, no, and also biblical texts, ancient sacred texts, all these things. So. And so we sometimes kind of forget that they're really everywhere. What I mean? They're really everywhere. But it's also, the difference between, there's a lot of similarity between near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. The difference would be that a near-death experience would occur at the time someone is close to death. And there's a lot of similarities that can occur in near-death and out-of-body experiences. But out-of-body experiences could then also go much further then, because if someone is cultivating this gift, then the experiences would not then be limited to what you would experience at that one moment. you would be able to take that deeper, go further with it. So, you have those hallmark moments that go with, the life reviews, meeting with your dead relatives, having the experience of the unconditional love of God, having the experience of understanding the mysteries of God. Those are all hallmark moments of both near death and out of body experiences. But you would then have the ability to take all of that and then go deeper. You see?
I do. How did you become interested in this? Is it because you had an out of body experience yourself, perhaps at a young age, and you decided you wanted to explore this, or did you know people that had these? How did this become a study for you?
Well, what happened was a couple of things. One was when I was 9 years old, I had a really, really beautiful experience where I was basically shown that I had some sort of destiny around the out of body experience. And then the experiences returned to me at the age of 22. And I started journaling them. And literally, it unfolded in the way that it did. What I found was that out of body experiences were much more than people realized. Um, uh, the literature on the subject up until the time that I started experiencing them, which started back again in 1987 when I was 22, would have been much more grounded. There was, the ancient sacred texts, which eventually I was led to go study, because I was directed by a lot of spiritual teachers in these experiences that I had. But a lot of our out of body travel teachings had been very earthbound, so to speak. We didn't realize that there is so much more to be learned here, and that the experience is actually intended for so much more than just this curiosity and, oh, okay, let's learn that we're so much more than our bodies. It's actually really intended for this profound spiritual transformation, which comes from uh, not just knowing that, but then, okay, let's take that much further. Let's actually now study that. Let's go beyond that understanding and now study that. So uh, your like, for instance, now we're releasing a new film. My producer's amazing, so he just put out a new film unexpectedly, of course. And he put out a film called Initiations into the Mysteries, which really exemplifies this very well. So what we're doing now, if you're going into the initiations into the mysteries, it's going into the deep uh, understandings of the soul, and how does the soul actually move, bend, evolve, go forward in the spiritual evolution of a human being. What are we actually going to need to achieve in this earthly lifetime, this earthly incarnation here, in our physical life, in our spiritual evolution, if we wish to achieve what was intended for us at the time of our incarnation. And so that is, part of it is contained in these initiations into the mysteries, which my producer just released a film on that a couple of days ago. And the reason this becomes so important is because we don't necessarily understand this until we go much deeper into these transformations of the soul, many of which come through or come about through out of body travel, or even just come about through the study of out of body travel, even the study of the ancient sacred texts, which are, the writings of souls who were great mystics, who were studying the great science of the soul. They were great travelers in the out-of-body travel realms. And so their ancient writings have these keys of what are the secrets of the soul that we all must be bringing within our own spirits if we wish to be making progress in this lifetime towards a higher construct. Do
It's
you know
interesting.
what I'm saying?
The one thing one of the many things about your experiences and your writings that I find fascinating, it gives hope to people who maybe in the past have thought that their physical experience on this earth. I've always considered our physical bodies to be cocoons for our souls. In other words,
Yes.
they're just a shell that we wear. That's not what makes us up. It's a physical appearance, but that our souls are eternal. Would you say that the soul is eternal, that we go on forever, and that we have the ability to separate ourselves from our bodies, to witness that for ourselves, to realize that hey, we're just using this as a storage facility for a short time, but that our consciousness and our soul goes on forever?
Yeah, this is a flask. This is just a flask. And it's one of many, many flasks that, the soul moves and meanders through time and, and through many, many life streams, many, many ways in which energy moves and life moves. The nature of the soul is not one dimensional, meaning that the nature of the soul is to experience life through as many windows of perception that it may. So the soul is going to blow through life in its many manifestations, whether it is through the life of trees and animals and plants or other types of existences within the human spectrum, within, we want to know what it's like to be and do all things. We want to know what it's like to be an Aboriginal man in Australia, as well as a Chinese woman in ancient China, as well as, a Christian monk in an, we want to know what it's like to be a Russian. We want to know what it's like to be everything. We want to know what it's like to live in Egypt. We want to know what it's like to be a Muslim, a Christian. We want to know what it's like to perform all manner of vocations, the different types of work. We want to know what it's like to have the gift of science and thinking, whereas we also want to know what it's like to be given the creative spirit to be able to do that with our creative soul, as well as to be able to work with numbers, to be able to work the land. We want to know what it's like to work through everything. We want to know what it's like to be white, black, yellow, red. We want to know what it's like to be every race of man. We want to know what it's like to be every species of life in the universe. We want to know what it's like to not just be human beings, but what it's like to be other forms of life on other planets. And many of us have done so. We want to know what it's like to experience existence within many of these life streams that actually exist in between lifetimes. There is life that exists in between that is not something that we would necessarily be aware of in the human realm, but in the realm in the beyond this life, it's a very common things that are very commonly known. There are many, many, many existences, many, many different realms of existence. There's you know, an infinite number of heavens, an infinite number of purgatorial realms, an infinite number of hells. There's also an infinite number of worlds, you know. So, Paramahamsa Yogananda referred to all the astral planets. His Swami Sri Yukteswar spoke of them as well. We know of many of the masters who spoke of the many, many worlds. These are all places you can spend time as a soul traveling. There are transcendental worlds. There are worlds that ironically the Buddhists called the worlds of the Pure Lands. They actually exist. I've traveled to them. They are beautiful places where the masters reside. Um, and I've spoken about that a lot recently because I've written about it, ironically, in this latest series of books that I'm releasing the third and final installment in the Redemption series, which is the Lord of the Redemption. We released it yesterday. And we talk about the pure lands of Buddhism and how those places really exist. And there's a lot in these books about that and how these places and how these Buddhist texts, the Pali Canon and the Mahayana, and how these texts correlate with the texts of ancient Christianity. There are parallels in even the ancient sacred texts that many of us are not aware of because we just don't take the time to notice. But it shows us things that are very important. If we want to actually, shorten the journey here, we don't want to just keep doing the same thing over and over again and then just kind of wasting a lot of time, kind of like not making real progress. We want to actually do the things that will accelerate the spiritual progress we will make here so that we can actually move forward as we, exit this lifetime and rather than just do what a lot of human souls will just kind of quietly cycle into reincarnation or other things where it's kind of like same stuff, different day,
So you do believe in reincarnation. So the soul can leave one body and then find another home in another life, another body, another time.
Yes, I do. I have seen that, a lot of that. And in fact, one of the things that becomes one of the things that we're trying to make people aware of is that a lot of people can waste a lot of time this way because there's this almost like, we all have this sleep that comes over us.
Right.
It's a natural sleep that comes over us. It's part of the earthly condition, part of what happens as we enter into earthly incarnation. But part of what our task is as a soul is to wake up. And then as we awaken, we have to actually do quite a few other things if we want to really accelerate the journey here and possibly fulfill all the things that we set out to do before we planned out this incarnation, because so many of us never actually achieve what we set out to do in the incarnation before we entered in. And it's very common for that to happen. It's not uncommon at all. It's actually much more common for that to happen than for someone to actually fulfill what they initially set out to do. And part of that is because we fall so easily into this secular world of none of this really matters, the spiritual life is stupid, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in religions, none of this, whatever it is you fall into. And then people just waste a lot of time, and so then what happens is nothing. So nothing happens. And so then literally it's just the karmic circling. And we talk about that, ironically, in the initiations into the mysteries, because this is one of the cycles that we discuss when you're going into the initiations into the mysteries, is how do you break the karmic circling? And so you want to check out the film to learn a little bit about that, because this is something that almost all human souls have to learn how to break it, stop it, because you really have to generate impetus, and the impetus has to come from within. You have to really want to do something different, and then you have to really like break down a lot of old habits, and then, okay, we're going to do something different now. you know
Right.
because if you don't do it different, you're going to do it the same, and that has the same result. And so it's like we do the same, and so but what we have ahead of us that is so exciting, about out of body travel. And all of the books that I've written, including all the new ones and everything, they're all available for free download at the website. We went forward with the idea of reducing spiritual poverty worldwide based on Mother Teresa's comments. She had said that she found the spiritual poverty of the West was worse than the physical poverty of the East. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty strong comment. So what we tried to do from the very beginning was make everything available for free download. And so everyone can go to the site, download everything that we have, and you can follow these things. And we have so many people who didn't think any of this kind of stuff was possible for them, and they find that very quickly they start their own journey, or people who have already started one but they need some help figuring out where they're at and where to go from there. They find themselves just accelerating that and going forward. And so you can do that, and it's not difficult. It's all provided right there. We even have a course of study that's free. So you can do lots of different things there, and my email's there. You can send me questions as well. And so we have a lot of resources available if you're interested in doing that. But it's easy to just take a few steps, and once you take those steps, you find it's really not like this all daunting task
Right.
to do something different with it.
What is something that you refer to as the universal mind? What does that mean?
Well, the universal mind is something, ironically, people can talk about. It's the way that people refer to God. It can also be referred to as universal being. It can be also referred to as the universal field of existence. One of the things you find in the out of body travel experience is that there is this field of, I believe it is in Hinduism, where they talk about the field of play. And you experience this very vividly in out of body experiences, where the field of play, where the spirits roam, is very vividly in front of you. It makes much more sense when you're all of a sudden in the out of body travel state, where everything works in complete concert and conjunction with one another. It all works together. And it's so interesting as well when you hear some of these new things that are happening in science that they're now putting forth. It is so in perfect harmony with what mystics are experiencing and have been experiencing for 5,000, 10,000 years. Ironically, a few years back, I did a little project with Dr. Rudy Shield, who is the former astrophysics professor at Harvard. And we did a little chapter in a book called The Change, called The Science for Moral Law. And we were working on a project for the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Experiences. And they had contacted me because I was a mystic. And they said that they were finding that what mystics had said for 5,000 years is what they were finding in all of the new theories in science, you know. And this was very interesting to me as a mystic, because I'm not, you know, really that brilliant scientifically. And so, but, you know, it's interesting how in the fields of science, so, you know, we did this article together, The Science for Moral Law. Dr. Shield had explained to me how everything that they had done in their scientific studies had shown that all matter had, and all energy, first of all energy comes forward and seeks manifestation. But there is a moral order in all of it. And it is clearly shown in the experiments that they run. But he also was talking about the all of the things that we end up seeing, you know. So he would talk about, you know, how people talk about the entanglements, how one, you know, the quantum entanglements that people are talking about, where you can see immediately where one particle on one end of the universe and another on the other is immediately affected by the activity of another. Now, when you're in the mystical spheres, in the out-of-body travel realms, this is immediately evident. Because when you are out of your body, if you think of a place, you're immediately there. That's how you travel in the out-of-body travel state. When you communicate with other people, it's all telepathic. So it's all, this communication is just instant like that. Emotions and all these other things are all just instantly shared across the board. So there is this universal field of being, you know. And the other aspect of that is that beyond the universal field of being, which is all existence, which then when you put it all together becomes all consciousness, and then God, because it's all one, it's all the same thing, you know. So it's, you know, we get caught up in names and forms, you know, but it's all the same thing. Um, but it goes beyond this, because this attachment, this connection that you experience in the out-of-body travel state, it goes beyond these thinking, feeling, even this travel that I'm speaking of, because there is something that near-death experiencers and out-of-body travelers also drop into, which is understanding all the mysteries of existence. And that's like when it's like you just suddenly, it's like God downloads the mysteries of God within you. And for that period of time, you know everything, you understand it all makes sense, you know, and you know that when you come out of it, it doesn't anymore, but you remember that it did, you know.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. So you're saying that all of this information, this consciousness, and everything that you experience in an out of body experience, when you return to your body, when you come down from that, you don't you remember that you had an experience, but you don't remember the knowledge that you gained during that experience. It's only available to you when you're out of your body.
Well, not exactly. That's what happens is, you when you in specifically when you're talking about that experience of all the mysteries of God, you know, that's such a vast, you know, cornucopia, I guess you could say, that you're talking about something that is, um, so large that there's no way you're just going to be like, oh yeah, now I'm an encyclopedia. You know what I mean? Every
Right.
time you have an out of body experience, you're bringing a part of heaven back to earth with you, but you can't bring it all back.
Sure.
So every time you go, you're bringing a part back with you. Um, with your experiences, there will be aspects, there will be some experiences where you bring back tons of information or memory back, things that you see, witness, or whatever, very consciously. And then there are others where you will only be allowed to remember portions of it. And on the other hand of it, this is important, knowledge is not information, it's vibration. And
Okay.
so this is something that human beings don't understand. But you learn this very quickly in the out of body travel experience. And so as you try to go higher, you will undergo vibrational raisings. And so there will be things that you understand. So, like, you're standing in this field of vibration wherein you have been allowed into the mysteries of God. That's a field of vibration, and those mysteries are known to you in that moment vibrationally. But when you return to your physical flask does not vibrate at the speed that your spiritual body does. It vibrates at a much lower density. You're
Okay.
not capable of understanding that, and you're not going to be able to bring that vibration into that physical form. And you will learn as you go through the out of body experiences that a great part of what you're going to be doing is continually raising that vibration so that understanding and knowledge can continually increase. But this knowledge that you're talking about is going to be coming to you as vibration. And this is really important um, because on the ground, in the human condition, many people look at information. Information is wisdom, right? But that's not the case. That's not the truth. In out of body travel, another thing we talk about is energetic truth, because what is true down here is what we say is true, right? What we
Right.
determine is true is true. In
And we only
the
get that from our own physical earthly experiences, right? That's what we base our truth
Exactly,
on.
exactly. So in the mystical spheres, there's something known as energetic truth. And that is determined by a couple of factors. One is energetic law, and the other is eternal law. And these are two factors that you will get trained in if you begin having significant out of body travel experiences. One is energetic law is what are the laws of how energy moves and flows in the actual spheres. And I guess I'll just leave it at that because that's very different than what we do down here. Eternal law is what is the truth of a matter according to God, how God sees it, and what is actually true according to like, for instance, let's say with an interaction. Let's just go with a human interaction, make it simple.
All right.
A human interaction would be determined by the intention of the act, by the knowledge of the act, by uh, what the parties were actually setting out to do. It would not be by um, this is not okay, this is okay. There would be all of these factors that are placed in there based on what God knows versus what we might know. And so energetic truth and eternal law would then combine to determine the validity of an interaction upon the earth, according through and to the eye and will of God. that we, as those who would be asked to serve God in the spirit world, would be required to operate through and by, because we cannot operate by human law. We have to operate by eternal law. And so again, there you have another one where again you have to learn. There's a huge amount of discipline that goes into this, as well as purification, a lot of discernment and discrimination, as I call it. That's from the Buddhists. They have purification, discrimination, and discipline is the part of their monastic path. And discrimination refers to discernment, learning discernment as to what are the actions that propel a soul forward, what are the actions that propel a soul backwards, and all of these factors play into that. And so when you're going from this standpoint of being a human being on the ground, and then you start traveling in the out-of-body travel state, you start having to learn about these things. So you learn eternal law, energetic law. You learn about this universal field of being, and okay, so how do things actually move within these realms of energy? What is the difference between vibrational knowledge and human knowledge? And all of these things come into play in the out-of-body travel experience.
Okay. All right. Now, how does one achieve an out-of-body experience? If you make a conscious effort to say, I would like to have an experience such as this, how do you go about doing it?
Well, there's a lot of different steps, and I have a few books that you can check out. And so I have a whole set of how-to books. I think there's 9 or 10 of them now. So go to the site. They're downloadable for free.
And
go
that's
to the
outofbodytravel.org, correct?
Yes, thank you. Good point. Outofbodytravel.org. Go to Out of Body Books, and it's the first section on the page is the how to have out-of-body experiences. But start with Come to Wisdom's Door, and the Mysteries of the Redemption, how to have wait a minute, I'm messing up my titles, David.
It's okay. With 102 books, you have a right to mess up your own titles.
Yeah, so it's Come to Wisdom's Door, how to have an out-of-body experience, and the Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out-of-body travel and mysticism. Those are the two I recommend for people starting out. And the first one really gives you all the basics for getting in the right proper mindsets and all these things. And the Mysteries of the Redemption gets people, it kind of like sets out a map for people. It starts getting them prepared for what to expect in the spirit realms and things they should anticipate running into. And people just start having spontaneous experiences just with that. So ironically, when I was writing that book, which was decades ago, I was told that it would do that. And I wasn't sure if that would happen, but it has kind of proven out to be the case. A lot of people are having that happen. So I would say go for that. But also another book on the site is just a little small devotional called Astral Projection Made Easy, which has little tips for every day of what you need to be focused on. That literally comes from the Come to Wisdom's Door, which will help you to focus on the details of what you need to do daily. But a lot of it's going to come down to 3 simple things. But they're not that simple in practice, but simple to say. Simple to say, harder to do. But, it's going to be prayer, meditation, and spiritual reading. Ironically, there's nothing new about this, because here we are talking about what the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics have done for thousands and thousands of years. But why are we talking about it again? Because, hey, it worked for them. It still works. Why does it work? Well, I don't know that we need to answer that. We just know it does, right? So, but the thing is that this is what has worked for all the great mystics from every world tradition, from throughout history. Um, so you want to figure out a prayer practice that works for you. Why does prayer work? Because you're talking to God. Meditation, you want to figure meditation because now you're listening to God back. You need to have both. You need to have the inflow and the outflow, right? And one of the things that I often tell people about the meditation, I usually recommend like a mindfulness, which is a Buddhist practice. You just focus on the breath. Don't worry about your thoughts. Just let them come and go, but focus on your breath. And I also suggest up to 3 hours at a period of time, because the level of consciousness that you're going to need is very deep for the out of body state, because you're going to want to be able to dive deep to reach a vibrational state when you will achieve an out of body experience.
Okay, so you have to meditate and pray and focus on your breathing. Allow thoughts to flow freely in and out. You don't try to consciously um, keep things from coming into your mind. You just let them flow free. Is there a particular time of day that people are more receptive to the ability to be able to achieve this state? I mean, is morning, afternoon, evening? Is there a particular setting? For example, in the practice of yoga, people have a certain temperature in the room that it has to be. They wear a certain style of clothing. Are there certain things that have to be set up in advance in order to achieve this?
Well, that's a good question. And I do think that for the meditation period, I usually recommend, and this is for people who are, because you have to make adjustments. Like if you work a completely different type of schedule, you know what I mean? So people who work nights and all that stuff, you kind of have to adjust. But if you work a regular day schedule or whatever, then this could work for you. And what's interesting is this is kind of how I've done it, but a lot of people have validated to me that this is what happened for them too. So I think there's something to it. So I usually would do my meditations like in the afternoon, like between 1 and 3 or 4.
Okay.
So that's a good time to do it. One of the things I've also found for myself, and I've also heard from others, is that there is a time between like 5 in the morning and like 8 or 9 in the morning, where it seems like people might go into like a twilight where these out of body experiences can become more possible. So if you're in a position where you can, do that, be open to staying in bed and seeing what happens there, because there's something that shifts in your sleep cycle at that time of day. The other thing that I do, I have some videos on our YouTube channel. We have tons of videos. We have lots of film and stuff that you can check out. Now we have 4 feature films you can check out, but we also have just some little videos that I did showing you how you can prepare your sleeping. You want to have holy things that are holy to you surrounding the place that you're sleeping at. For me, that's going to be a crucifix at the head of my bed, usually hold a rosary. I have holy images around me. You want to have either silence or holy music when you're going off to sleep at night. Um, Sometimes you can have like nature sounds too. That works for a lot of people. I like it a lot.
There are apps that you can download on your phone to provide
Oh
soft
yeah.
music or a natural that is more makes you more receptive to these experiences.
Yes. Yeah. And what's interesting too is people will go through different phases. And so this is important to acknowledge, because you might really like religious music, like chants or something, whether they're Hindu or Catholic or
Sure.
whatever, Sufi for a while, and then all of a sudden you need it to just be absolutely silent. And then you might need it to just have natural sounds. These are normal fluctuations in the spiritual life. So don't sweat it when those changes occur. That's normal for there to be fluctuations like that. So yeah, having that kind of thing. Another thing, ironically, I wrote a book called Fragrance Mysticism, which actually, talks about the references across the board in the ancient sacred texts about fragrance, because
Hmm.
in the higher spheres, um, there is fragrance. You actually will smell some of the most beautiful scents, just like you will see the most beautiful colors and uh, experience some of the most beautiful sensations. There's also this fragrance. And so, ironically, one of the things I often recommend is incense, essential oils. I have wax burners as well. Um, Whatever works for you, so like some people will have breathing problems. You can use possibly essential oil or waxes. um, so you find what just creates, because you know what it actually does, and what I have actually experimented with this for myself, is that it can actually kind of like, it almost like bends the space between us and the higher fragrant realms. So when you're doing that meditation, it almost like helps lift you up a little bit so that it's easier for you to get to that higher space quicker. And so all of these things are ways that we are trying to literally make our space feel more like those spiritual spheres, makes it easier for our spirit and body then to help uplift us to get out and get there quicker. So you can check out some of those little videos, see if there's any other tips I might be forgetting. But you think about those things. Think about that before you go to bed at night. You want to make sure that you are um, engaging your whatever your own particular prayer practice might be. I'm really a big fan of the Liturgy of the Hours right now. But again, like I said, we all go through these changes. So, next week it might be something else,
Right.
because I love, the Gayatri mantras. And I mean, so I can go through periods where it's all Hindu, and then it's the next week, it's all Catholic. So, so don't worry about it if you have changes. You know what I mean?
You know, what strikes me as something very beneficial. I'm thinking about all of the people who have been locked down in their homes because of COVID-19,
Mhm.
and I see these exercises and this ability to have this experience as something that would be of extreme benefit to people who are lonely and feel
Yeah.
that they're trapped within four walls, and they could actually leave that loneliness and achieve a consciousness and a contact. Have you had any experience or any contact with people who have said they found that to be beneficial?
A lot of people have talked about that. And I do think that, ironically, this period of time has really provided a unique format for people to really explore the spiritual. I actually, when the first Corona shutdowns came out, and I spoke for the first time about it, I said, well, if God is, trying to push this energy into the world, that we all need to be, uh, you know, uh, taking our spiritual lives more seriously, and none of us do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all of a sudden, look what happened. We're all on a forced retreat. All of a sudden, the entire world, all at one time. And I said, well, that's interesting. So,
Right.
so yeah, I mean, we are on this forced spiritual retreat. Now we're going on almost a year at it. And so, God's mysterious ways in action, we certainly can utilize whatever this is for. We can utilize it for positive uses no matter what. You know what I mean? And
It's forced us to look inward anyway.
right.
So to
Well,
me, I see this as the beginning of achieving that meditation. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have turned to meditation and prayer and that sort
I
of thing.
do think a
So they're
lot of
already
people
on their
have. I
first
hear
step.
that from a lot of people. A lot of people are doing that, and people who are already doing that are doing it more, and people who have never done it are looking into it now, and people who had a harder time doing that because they had to spend so much more time going to and from work. It's easier for people to now because we don't have so much time in commute. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, it's
It does
fascinating.
make it easier. And
Well,
people
that's
can
the thing.
even, working at home, people can take a short period for meditation in the middle of the day.
I think it's awesome. I think it's a great idea. Now, talk about this concept of ghosts and lost souls. What's
Oh,
that
yeah.
all
Well, a lot of people who experience out of body travel for the first time or shortly thereafter will find very quickly that they will start running into ghosts and lost souls, wandering spirits. And these are going to be the souls of the deceased who kind of got stuck. So this will be one of the first things. One of the things about out of body travel is you're going to go through continual schooling. That might not sound real, exciting to most, but we're going to go through different phases of teaching and learning. And one of the first things will be about the ghosts, lost souls, wandering spirits. And it's really important because one of the other first things we learn is that creation requires us to always give back to creation what creation gives to us. And so, just as we are receiving assistance from spirits who are of a higher vibration and energy, and they are more evolved than we are then also required to give back to souls who need assistance. And that doesn't necessarily mean ghosts, lost souls, and wandering spirits are of a lower evolution. We will deal with that with souls in lower spheres, but that's another subject. But we do run into, ironically, on the astral plane a lot, where a lot of lost souls do get stuck there. And this often happens when souls either had no belief in God or an afterlife or anything spiritual, and or they died very suddenly, or they were the victim of a very traumatic death, um, or um, or they died in a way where they have not been able to come to terms with something that they did, or they haven't been able to come to terms with something that happened during their life. They can get stuck. Even if they just haven't been able to come to terms with leaving that lifetime behind, they're attached to it, you know?
Mhm.
And you can see how easily that can happen because, we started our conversation out with you talking about how people sometimes have a hard time, even just with the concept of we are actually spiritual beings, and this is a flask. This is
Right.
just one of many of our, gourds that we, that carries our soul. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it is such a commonly held belief. And so, as in our human life, we become so attached to this very life that it is not uncommon at all for people when death comes to be so attached to this life that they can get lost and become either a wanderer or a lost soul and sometimes a ghost. And ironically, all three of those are different designations, and I'll tell you why. So, um, they're all serving a different function. A wandering spirit is usually a soul who is in a state of wandering because they're a purgatorial function. They are actually wandering the earth for a period of time because of something that they are doing time for.
Okay.
So, some type of neglect that they had during their life. So, they are doing some type of purgatory on earth. Um, so that is what a wandering spirit would be. Lost soul is usually a soul who isn't aware that they're dead. So lost souls are usually ones that don't know they're dead. So they are often the ones that, uh, well, I mean, it's hard to say because, but these are the ones that people will often run into when they say, oh, they were desperate to get me because they were so shocked I could hear them. You know what I mean? And,
Right.
because the lost souls are always excited when finally they meet somebody who can hear them because they don't realize they're dead and they've been trying to get someone and they're like, why can't anyone hear me? I don't understand this all of a sudden. You know what I mean? And it's because they all of a sudden they died and they didn't realize they died for whatever reason. A lot of times you see this at car accidents, but you also see it in a lot of variety of traumatic deaths. But there's a lot of reasons for the appearance of a lost soul. So, and you can learn a lot about that in the Mysteries of the Redemption. And a lot of my other books as well. I have a whole book called Ghosts and Lost Souls in the Mystic Knowledge series, if you're interested in that too. But go ahead.
Real quickly, because I want to get this in before we leave, and that is spirit guides and guardian angels. A lot of people believe that there is a particular spirit or some sort of an angel assigned to them, whose job it is to look out for them. Tell us about that a little bit, if you could.
Oh, absolutely. We are assigned a guardian angel at birth, and we have one that walks with us our entire life. And here we go with vibrational knowledge. This is why it's so important, because one of the reasons people become lost souls is not because their guardian angels aren't there. It's because when they cross over and they're unaware that they're dead and they have not been able to raise their vibration enough that they can actually see or communicate with their guardian angel. And so that's when spirits like myself, other earthbound spirits, are called in to assist, to help those souls to raise that vibration enough so they can communicate and then cross over. Now, spirit guides can be anything from a guide or a teacher. And these types of beings are people that don't necessarily, they're not usually, they can be, but that's only if a person is not making a lot of progress. So they're kind of staying in place throughout their life.
Right.
But if you are progressing, you will have many different spiritual teachers throughout your spiritual journey. So you will go through one set of teaching, and then you will be handed on to another teacher who will teach you about the next thing. And that will then continue throughout. And so you'll have many, many spiritual teachers in your spiritual journeying. But you do actually have a guardian angel that stays with you throughout. And you have many, many different types of angels that will interact with you throughout your life, other than your guardian angel as well. So there's a whole host of angels that are involved in our lives as well.
And there are extraterrestrial beings as well. Do we
Yes.
encounter those in our out of body experiences?
Well, I certainly have, and a lot of people that I have have worked with who have started having experiences do. There's a few who do not, but most eventually do. And it seems like from what we have all experienced, there are races that are definitely here, that are benevolent, that are here to assist us. And there are races here that are not benevolent, that are here for their own purposes. And so we have a little bit of both, you know. So you know, so I've written about a lot of that in my books as well. And so we do have both of those
All of these
things.
books are downloadable at your website, outofbodytravel.org, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Also, a little bit, what is Project Outreach and what are the Palladians?
Project Outreach was one of the, that was, that's one of the outposts in the galactic heavens that I've gone to in an out of body experience, where many of the star systems, the different extraterrestrial races, work together to reach out not just to our world, the Earth, but to other worlds like ours, that they are trying to bring from a world below the veil. That's what we're considered, a world below the veil, and other worlds below the veil, which is below the veil, which means that we are not awakened to reality yet. And so this is a place where they are literally reaching to trying to bring worlds like ours higher. The Pleiadians are from the Pleiadian galaxies, and they're beautiful and they're amazing
They're
star
like
beings.
blonde-haired, blue-eyed, right? Isn't that the picture that I have in my mind of those?
Some of them are, but they're not all blonde hair and blue eyed. You know, it's ironic that um, many of them actually would come wearing these monk robes. Not all of them, not all of them, because some of them were blonde hair and blue eyed. And there was one that actually came and he was long gray hair, white robe. And, you know, and then there were these others that were blonde hair, blue eyed. You know, we have to remember that on some of these other planets, that there is, you know, there is diversity too. You know what I mean? You
Right.
know, so, you
Right.
know,
You would hope
um,
so anyway, right?
yeah, and that, you know, but the Pleiadians are this civilization that is really very much focused on oneness and love. And so they're focused and they're very intense and powerful. And I remember with them just the sound of their ships was just, oh, and this beautiful experience I had, which probably some people would consider a little bit controversial, but I don't, so I'll just share it. Which was,
Sure.
you know, I had this beautiful, beautiful thing where I was following these ships that were coming in from the Pleiades. They were trying to come in and assist, you know, the Earth and humanity. And they came in, and this beautiful woman descended from beneath their ship. And she was wearing these robes of deep purple and violet. She wore this golden crown on her head with an orb at the top. And she came out, and there were crowds surrounding her, you know, from the Pleiadians and the earth people, you know, in the spiritual realm, because the people were coming, the spirits were coming to see her. And they called her the Lady in Light. And I was trying to get closer to her because I wanted to see her because she was so important. And I knew she was important. You could feel it. Um, it was just something you knew in your gut, in your soul. This is an important soul. And I got up to her and I looked up at her and she looked back at me and I said, "Oh my God, you're the Blessed Virgin Mary." She had come from the Pleiades.
I can see why that would be controversial for some people, but
It
if
was
you
beautiful.
experienced her, that's awesome.
It was beautiful. And it was just so breathtaking. It was breathtaking. And, um, and I'm not the only one who's seen that, you know. But yes, yeah, so the Pleiadians, but there are many others as well, you know. So there are, you know, as the Pleiadians are very focused on the oneness and the love, there are these other extraterrestrial civilizations, like the Tibetans. I call
Okay.
them Tibetans because they worked a lot with the people of Tibet, and they never told me where they came from. And there was this other one. There were these two in particular who were so advanced and evolved. They never told me where they were from, and they were definitely not any of the species that any of us have heard of. They were just so far beyond anything that, and I've met with many of the other ones that we've heard of, like the Arcturians and the Alpha Centaurians. But these two I like to speak about the most because they were so, awe-inspiring. I can't even, you can see by the look on my face, I don't know what to say. The other ones were from a galaxy, a star system so far away, I don't even know how to quantify it.
Okay.
And they came and they wanted me to just for a moment see what it felt like to live on their world. And so they embraced me. And in that moment, I was able to translate into their world. And they lived in this place of such a high vibration of existence. It was so eons beyond anything we could even conceive of here. I mean, it's so hard to put it into words. I really just did not want to have to come back. And when I came back, it was like, I was like, can I just go there and stay? And it's like, but it was not something, I wasn't qualified for sure. I was definitely not a being ready to live in their world, or I wasn't qualified at all. But it was, but I think that one of the reasons they allowed me to experience this, and the Tibetans allowed me to see who they were, it wasn't for any other reason than for me to share, so other people would know that these types of civilizations that are so far beyond our ability to comprehend do exist, and they are, the only words that we have are, love and oneness and unity and light. But those words sound so lame when I try to describe these two races. It's like almost like blasphemy. It's like,
Are there other emotions that we as human beings don't experience that other beings do?
I think,
Aspects of the
what I think, the thing that I would say is, it's there is a cultivation of the emotions that they
Okay.
experience that is so refined and so much higher than us. Because how human beings, we have this tendency to, we fly off the handle, we're
Right.
all over the place like this. They have this ability to emanate.
Okay.
They have evolved into a field of existence that is so far beyond what we are that it's not even comparable to us. And that's not to say that what we are isn't what we are meant to be, and that it's not okay to be us. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
not to say that, but it's to let us remind ourselves that there are higher objectives to be had. There are goals to be sought after. You know what I mean? And there are other forms of existence that, besides our own. And it's interesting too, because we always talk about extraterrestrial existence in comparison to our own, even just in terms of, well, does it support life? And we don't, we look at the rest of the universe and galaxies only as, does it support life? And we compare it to what we know life to be.
Right. Exactly.
And so
There's no
we're not
oxygen. It doesn't support. What they should say is it may not support human life. Doesn't that
right.
doesn't instead of it doesn't support life at all, or or it doesn't support this bodily our bodies. It won't support the lives of these shells that we're in. Our
Well,
consciousness may be able to live there.
well, one of the things that we have to start asking, rather than, we always ask the questions that are based on our very limited human awareness. We have to, and this is one of the things we learn in out of body travel very well, slowly. I guess I was going to say quickly, but it's kind of slow. We're kind of slow. But that's normal for us. We're kind of supposed to be that way, but um, how we talk about how odd it is that there are so few what we consider to be inhabitable worlds out
Right.
there. Maybe we need to, or maybe we're asking the wrong question because, um, this is I think one of the fallacies of humanity is that, okay, God is a lot different than us. He doesn't, we're creatures, so like a one-celled like a one-celled being thinks differently than we think, is how differently the creator will think differently than us. And one thing that comes to mind when I think of these, just these two species that I met, and even calling them species is a little bit not right feeling
Right.
to me, well, maybe the wrong question, um, because maybe what is happening there is that when life evolves, maybe life is evolving vibrationally as we see in the out of body travel state, and maybe all these worlds are inhabited in ways that we are unable to fathom at this time in our own evolution. And that's possible. I mean, I'm not saying they are, because I don't know. But I do know that in the initiations into the mysteries, we are required to go to many of these bodies. We have to go through Saturn's rings, and we have to go to Jupiter, we have to go to Venus, and we have to take in the energies of these different galactic spheres and things, and it's very possible that we are not able to fathom what those what the life on other galactic worlds might look like. And again, going back to also what we talked about earlier, which was that there is a whole, you know, a whole bunch of existences that we are not aware of here, that we become aware of when we cross over. Like that Paramahamsa Yogananda, Sri Yukteswar, his master, and many others. The ascended masters spoke of these things. I think even the Mormons talk about various planets. You know what I mean? But
Right.
so there's a lot of different references throughout world religion and ancient sacred texts to these various planets. But when you go into these mystical spheres, these bodies in the universe, you can travel to them. You do travel through the galactic heavens. You have that ability. So what we see as uninhabitable space while we are embodying these flasks is inhabitable and very much inhabited in the afterlife worlds. So I think there's more to that question than meets the eye. You know what I mean?
Now you have a seminar coming up.
I do. And, that's an excellent add on there to, the question if you really want to just explore how to have these experiences. I'm doing this seminar, starts February 12th.
Okay.
Yeah, you can sign up for it at the website outofbodytravel.org. It is being put on by the Conference for Consciousness and Human Evolution in London. And you can check it out at the outofbodytravel.org, and it'll link you up to where you can
It'll be a
get
video
your
seminar?
seats. It'll be live online. So it'll be live. You'll be able to interact with me the whole time. And so we will be going really deep in this seminar. We're going to go through every single detail of, I'm going to tear apart every aspect of how to have an experience. And then we're going to dive into some of the ancient sacred texts on how to have out of body experiences as well. We're going to really go deep on this.
That's outofbodytravel.org to sign up for this seminar. Amongst Marilyn's wonderful books, Ghosts and Lost Souls, the Mystic Knowledge Series, The Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out-of-body travel and mysticism, Come to Wisdom's Door, How to Have an Out-of-Body Experience. That's the first one I think people should read.
Probably.
The Hammer of Mysticism, Encyclopedic Journey into Out-of-Body Travel and Mystical Processes and Terms, Dialogues with a Mystic 2, and The Lord of the Redemption, Hermetic, Archtronics, the Saviours, and the Tachyon Teachings in Out-of-Body Travel. Tell us about this new movie you just found out today. Is this movie also posted at your website?
It is, and you can check it out at our YouTube channel. It's Initiations into the Mysteries. And it's going to be the first of 3 films that my producer is putting together on initiations into the mysteries. And this is, this is the stuff we're talking about, which is what are all these heavy duty, energetic, vibrational things that you need to know? The mysteries, the Eleusinian, the ancient Hermetic, the actual mysteries you travel through in out of body experiences, because you do go through this when you. There's a point not far into it where if you continue to pursue this, you're going to start entering into the initiations into the mysteries. We're also going to be doing a film on the rites of passage, which follow, and these are, a lot of the details, the details of how you get to these places. And one of the neat things about the films that Brian Malum, my producer of Mysteries Productions, is doing is that he's making accessible these important initiations and alterations to everybody. So whether you're having out-of-body experiences or whether you ever do, the benefit of the knowledge of those experiences is available to you. So you can benefit from it whether you're having those experiences or not. Because sometimes for those who do not have the experiences, and this is one of the benefits of the ancient sacred texts as well, we learn from the keys that have been left behind by the great sages and ascetics who leave them behind right before they finish up here, and they leave their last keys behind for us so that we might find our way as well. And so we want to find that gold,
I find this very enriching. I have found this to be a fascinating discussion. I highly recommend people visit your website, Marilyn, again, outofbodytravel.org.
David.
Download the books, check out the movie on the YouTube channel, and check out that seminar beginning February the 12th, which will be streamed live online. More details on all of that at Marilyn's website, outofbodytravel.org. Marilynn Hughes, thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate it. I learned a lot. One of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to download Come to Wisdom's Door, How to Have an Out-of-Body Experience, and learn as much as I can about it. I found this to be a wonderful discussion, and I thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, David, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless. Take care. That's Marilynn Hughes of outofbodytravel.org. Please check out her website. Please download her books. and check out the seminar coming up on February the 12th.